There are moments in a person's life when the air itself feels charged, as though eternity has leaned a little closer to whisper something that was always meant to be heard. You may not have expected it today. You may have been moving through your hours as you always do, quietly carrying your questions, silently enduring your uncertainties, when suddenly the thought arrives, not as a shout, but as a certainty. This is the place you will live in starting next week. And you know, deep within, that this is not the echo of your own imagination. It is something higher, something steadier, something that speaks with authority, yet carries a tenderness that no human voice can perfectly imitate. To be called a chosen one is not to be flattered, it is to be summoned. There is a profound difference. Flattery inflates the ego, but a summons humbles the soul. When God declares a place over your life, He is not merely describing geography. He is revealing destiny wrapped in walls, windows, streets, and seasons. We often think of home as bricks and beams, but heaven regards it as formation. The place you will live is not only where you will sleep, it is where you will be shaped. You may wonder why the message specifies, starting next week. Why such immediacy? Because the divine does not operate in vague sentiments. When God speaks, time responds. The calendar itself becomes an instrument in His hand. There are seasons appointed for wandering, and there are seasons appointed for dwelling. Perhaps you have known the first. Perhaps you have felt like a traveler with no permanent address, not only in body but in spirit. Yet now the declaration comes with startling clarity: this is the place. Not someday. Not when you are ready. Next week. The human heart resists such certainty. We prefer gradual transitions, gentle hints, careful negotiations. But the voice of God often interrupts our careful arrangements. He chooses places that stretch us, rooms that challenge our old definitions of comfort, neighborhoods that force us to trust more deeply than before. You may look at this place and see unfamiliarity. He sees preparation. You may notice the size, the color, the distance. He notices the growth that will occur within its walls. There is something profoundly spiritual about relocation. It mirrors the deeper movement of the soul from old identities to new callings. When God changes your dwelling, He often changes your understanding of yourself. You will walk through those rooms differently than you walked through the last. You will pray differently. You will think differently. Even your silence will feel different, for place influences perception, and perception shapes faith. Perhaps you are asking, why me? The chosen are not selected because they are the most capable, but because they are willing to be guided. The announcement of a new home is not a reward for perfection, it is an invitation to trust. God does not reveal the place so you can analyze it endlessly. He reveals it so you can step forward. There is courage required in moving. There is surrender required in leaving. Yet obedience is rarely convenient. Notice that the message is personal. This is the place you will live. It does not say, this is a place you might consider. It does not present options or alternatives. The certainty may unsettle you, but it also protects you. In a world crowded with voices, it is mercy to hear one that speaks with unmistakable clarity. The chosen life is not a life free from confusion, but it is a life interrupted by divine direction. As you imagine this new dwelling, do not measure it only by what it offers materially. Measure it by what it demands spiritually. Will it require greater patience? Will it cultivate deeper gratitude? Will it challenge your independence and teach you reliance? God's placements are purposeful. Even the smallest detail can become an instrument of transformation. You may not yet see how everything will align. The finances, the timing, the conversations, the farewells, all of these may seem like scattered pieces, but when God names a place, He also arranges the path toward it. What appears sudden to you has been unfolding in His wisdom long before you were aware of it. The door you will walk through next week was prepared in silence. And so you stand at the threshold of change, not because you engineered it, but because you were addressed by it. The chosen do not chase destiny, they respond. to it. The place awaiting you is not merely a shelter from the weather. It is a chapter, a refining ground, a sacred setting in which unseen purposes will quietly unfold. There is a sacred tension that surrounds the moment when heaven designates a place for you. It is not merely about relocation, it is about revelation. When God declares, "This is the place you will live in starting next week," He is not speaking casually, nor is He indulging a fleeting impulse. He is unveiling a movement in your story that has been quietly arranged long before your awareness caught up with it. The walls you will soon stand within have already been considered in the architecture of your calling. The streets you will walk have already been measured against the steps you were destined to take. What feels sudden to you is, in truth, the unveiling of something long prepared. We are accustomed to thinking of homes in practical terms. We ask whether the space is large enough, whether the light enters at the right angle, whether the surroundings feel safe or familiar. Yet when God names a place over your life, He is not preoccupied with convenience in the way we are. He sees the invisible shaping that will occur there. He sees the conversations that will happen in quiet corners, the prayers whispered at midnight, the tears shed in private that will strengthen rather than weaken you. A house becomes holy not because of its structure, but because of the transformation that unfolds within it. The chosen life carries a peculiar weight. To be chosen is not to be placed above others, but to be entrusted with a particular path. When God speaks of your dwelling, He is also speaking of your development. The environment into which you are about to step is aligned with lessons you could not learn elsewhere. Perhaps comfort has held you too tightly in the past. Perhaps uncertainty has stretched you thin. Now there is a place designed precisely to meet you at this stage of your journey. It may not resemble what you imagined. Indeed, divine placements rarely mirror our private fantasies. But they always serve a deeper purpose than our limited expectations. Consider how often growth is tied to movement. The seed cannot remain in the open air if it is to become a tree. It must be buried in a specific soil. Likewise, you cannot remain where you were and become who you are meant to be. There are attachments that must loosen, routines that must end, familiar sights that must fade into memory. The announcement that you will live somewhere new beginning next week carries urgency, because stagnation is not your portion. The timetable is not arbitrary. It is an expression of readiness, perhaps not the readiness you feel, but the readiness God perceives. There is also a profound mercy in specificity. This is the place. Leaves little room for hesitation. When the voice of God is clear, it cuts through the noise of competing desires and fears. You may still experience doubt, but doubt cannot erase the imprint of certainty once it has settled in your spirit. The clarity itself becomes a form of protection. You are spared the endless wandering that comes from indecision. Instead, you are invited into obedience, which is rarely comfortable but always formative. You might question whether you are prepared for such a shift. Yet preparation is not measured by your sense of control. It is measured by your willingness to trust. The chosen are not those who have perfected their plans, but those who dare to move when called. A new dwelling requires you to release the illusion that you orchestrate every detail of your life. It asks you to step into an unfamiliar arrangement of space and say, "Here also, I will trust." That trust is not blind. It is anchored in the character of the one who directs you. In the coming days, as you envision this place, resist the temptation to define it solely by its external features. Ask instead what kind of person you will become within its boundaries. Will patience deepen as you adjust to new rhythms? Will gratitude grow as you recognize provision in unexpected forms? Will humility expand as you acknowledge that this transition was not engineered by your own strength? The dwelling is not the destination. It is the setting for refinement. Even the phrase, "starting next week," carries a gentle insistence. It reminds you that destiny is not a distant abstraction, but an imminent reality. Time is not an enemy, it is an instrument. The days ahead will move with quiet determination, drawing you toward the threshold. You may feel both anticipation and apprehension, but neither emotion alters the truth of the declaration. The place has been named. The season has shifted. The invitation stands. And so you find yourself on the brink of moving, aware that something larger than preference is at work. The chosen path does not always unfold with dramatic spectacle. Often it begins with a simple, unwavering sentence spoken into the heart. This is the place. In that sentence lies assurance, challenge, and promise intertwined. The walls you are about to inhabit are more than shelter. They are part of a divine design that continues to unfold, shaping you quietly, steadily, and with intention. There is a difference between choosing a place for yourself and being placed somewhere by God. When you choose, you rely on preference, calculation, and visible advantage. When God places, He relies on purpose. The announcement that this is the place you will live in starting next week is not merely about relocation, it is about alignment. Something in your life has reached a point where remaining where you are would mean resisting a quiet, but necessary transformation. The chosen are often moved not because they are restless, but because heaven is. Alignment is rarely comfortable at first. When a bone is set back into its proper position, there is pressure before there is relief. In much the same way, when God shifts your environment, there can be a moment of internal resistance. You may have grown accustomed to your current surroundings, even if they were imperfect. Familiar discomfort can feel safer than unfamiliar promise. Yet the voice that speaks of your new dwelling carries an authority beyond your hesitation. It does not argue with your fears, it simply declares what will be. You might wonder why the timing feels so immediate. Starting next week leaves little room for elaborate emotional preparation. But divine timing often disrupts our preference for gradual adjustment. We like to move in slow increments, testing each step before committing our weight. God, however, sees the entirety of your path. He knows when delay would breed doubt, and when decisiveness will strengthen faith. The urgency is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is an invitation to trust without overanalyzing every possible outcome. A place is never just a place. It carries atmosphere, influence, and unseen lessons. You will not enter this new dwelling as the same person who leaves your current one. The simple act of moving alters perspective. New windows frame new views. New rooms create new routines. Even the way light falls across unfamiliar walls can awaken thoughts you did not previously entertain. God understands how deeply environment shapes the soul. The chosen are often relocated because their next stage of growth requires different surroundings. Perhaps where you are now has served its purpose. It sheltered you during a season of preparation. It allowed you to gather strength, to learn endurance, to refine your character in ways you did not fully recognize at the time. But preparation is not meant to last forever. At some point, the training ground gives way to the field. The declaration of a new home is evidence that your season is changing. Not because you forced it, not because you manipulated circumstances, but because the one who sees beyond the present moment has determined that it is time. There may be practical concerns swirling in your mind. How will everything come together so quickly? What conversations must be had? What resources must be gathered? Yet when God speaks with such certainty, He is not ignorant of logistics. The same voice that names the place also orchestrates the path. What appears complicated to you is simple in His sight. The chosen are not exempt from responsibility, but the why are never abandoned to figure everything out alone. It is also important to recognize that relocation can expose attachments you did not realize you had. Leaving a familiar place often reveals how deeply we tied our identity to it. We associate certain walls with memories, certain streets with milestones, certain corners with comfort. To step away from them can feel like stepping away from part of ourselves. But God does not remove you from a place to diminish you. He moves you to redefine you. Identity rooted in geography is fragile. Identity rooted in calling is unshakable. In this coming week, as the reality of change settles in, you may experience a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. That mixture is not a sign of weakness. It is the natural response of a human heart confronted with divine direction. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is obedience in the presence of it. The chosen are not those who feel no trembling, but those who move despite it. There is also a quiet promise embedded in the phrase, "This is the place." It suggests that you are not wandering blindly. You are not arriving at random. There is intentionality behind the address that will soon bear you our name. The rooms you will occupy have been considered in the unfolding of your story. Encounters will happen there that could not happen elsewhere. Growth will occur there that could not be cultivated in your previous setting. As the days draw closer, resist the urge to interpret this move purely through the lens of comfort or status. Instead, view it as participation in a larger narrative. You are being positioned, not merely relocated. Positioned for deeper understanding, for expanded faith, for responsibilities you may not yet see clearly. The chosen life is marked by movement directed from above, and each placement carries meaning beyond its surface. Next week is not simply a date on a calendar. It is a threshold. When you cross it, you will carry with you everything you have learned so far, yet you will also step into lessons still unfolding. The place that awaits you is more than a structure. It is an instrument in the hands of God, shaping you quietly, persistently, and with purpose that stretches further than you can presently imagine. There is a mysterious intimacy in the way God prepares a place for someone He has chosen. It is not the cold arrangement of furniture in an empty structure, nor is it the mechanical assignment of an address. It is more like the careful setting of a stage, upon which unseen chapters of your life will unfold. When you are told, "This is the place you will live in starting next week," you are not merely being informed of a change of scenery. You are being entrusted with a new arena of becoming. The chosen life is not static, it is continually repositioned for purpose. Often, we imagine that spiritual growth happens only in dramatic moments. Great victories, public declarations, extraordinary breakthroughs. Yet much of what refines a soul occurs in ordinary spaces. A kitchen table can become a place of revelation. A quiet bedroom can become a sanctuary of surrender. A simple doorway can mark the crossing from one version of yourself into another. The place you are about to inhabit will carry these quiet opportunities. Its significance will not always announce itself loudly. It will unfold gradually, woven into daily routines. There is also a certain vulnerability in entering a new environment. Familiar walls know your habits. They hold your history without explanation. But new walls are silent observers. They witness you without memory. In such spaces you are invited to redefine patterns. Old assumptions do not cling as tightly. There is room to build differently, to pray differently, to think differently. The chosen are often moved because stagnation hides in familiarity. God, who desires your growth more than your comfort, gently disrupts what has become too settled. You may wonder whether you are worthy of such intentional placement. Yet worthiness is not the measure used in divine selection. Availability is. The chosen are not flawless, they are responsive. They are those who, even in confusion, remain willing to listen. When God names a place for you, it is because He knows you will eventually step into it. There may be hesitation. There may be questions. But beneath it all, there is obedience waiting to be awakened. Consider how the anticipation of next week may already be stirring something within you. Even before you move, your thoughts are shifting. You are imagining where your belongings will rest, how the light might fall in the morning, what new rhythms might take shape. In this way, transformation begins before relocation. The soul starts adjusting even before the body does. God understands this interior movement. He prepares your heart alongside the physical space. There is also a sacred element of separation involved in every relocation. To enter one place, you must depart from another. Departing can feel like loss, even when the future holds promise. You leave behind not only physical surroundings, but also seasons of your life that cannot be recreated. Yet departure is not erasure. The lessons learned, the strength gained, the prayers uttered in your previous dwelling travel with you. Nothing invested in growth is wasted. The chosen do not abandon their past, they build upon it. It is possible that the new place will challenge your expectations. It may not fit neatly into the image you once held of success or security. But divine placement is not about fulfilling aesthetic desires. It is about aligning you with your next assignment. Within those walls, there may be conversations that redirect your path, insights that clarify your calling, moments of solitude that deepen your trust. The place itself becomes a participant in your formation. You might also sense that this relocation marks a boundary between who you were and who you are becoming. There are transitions in life that feel symbolic, almost ceremonial. Moving into a new dwelling can carry that weight. It is as though God is saying, the previous chapter has served its purpose. Now we turn the page. The act of stepping across the threes. Hold next week will not only change your address, it will signal the continuation of a story still being written. In the quiet of reflection, you may realize that this placement is an answer to prayers you no longer remember praying. Desires once whispered, hopes once faint, have found their response in this moment. God's timing often gathers scattered longings and fulfills them in ways you could not have orchestrated yourself. What seems sudden now may have been years in preparation. As the days pass and the moment approaches, allow yourself to embrace both the uncertainty and the assurance. The uncertainty keeps you humble. The assurance keeps you steady. The chosen path is rarely explained in full detail. Instead, it is revealed step by step, place by place. This new dwelling stands as the next step in that unfolding journey. It is not random. It is not accidental. It is intentional, purposeful, and quietly sacred. When you stand inside those new walls for the first time, there may be no visible sign in the sky, no dramatic confirmation beyond the calm conviction in your spirit. Yet that conviction is enough. For when God declares a place over your life, He does so with force, it and care, shaping not only where you will live, but who you will become within it. There comes a moment in the journey of a chosen soul when movement is no longer optional, but necessary. Not because dissatisfaction has grown unbearable, nor because ambition has demanded something larger, but because divine direction has quietly settled the matter. When God says, "This is the place you will live in starting next week," He is not merely transferring you from one structure to another. He is shifting the spiritual atmosphere around your life. Atmosphere matters more than we often realize. It influences thought, expectation, and even belief. A new place can carry a new spiritual climate, and in that climate, something long dormant within you may finally awaken. You may not immediately perceive the weight of what is happening. To others, it might appear to be a simple relocation, an ordinary life event. But the chosen understand that nothing directed by God is ordinary. There is intention behind the walls, meaning in the floor beneath your feet, and design in the very layout of the space you are about to occupy. The chosen life is marked by unseen orchestration. What seems coincidental to observers is purposeful alignment in the hands of God. It is worth considering that certain blessings cannot reach you where you currently stand. Not because you are unworthy, but because the setting does not support their unfolding. Some growth requires a different environment. A plant placed in soil that is too confined cannot stretch its roots. In the same way, your calling may be pressing against the boundaries of your present dwelling. God, who sees the pressure before you do, moves you before limitation becomes frustration. The announcement of next week is not abruptness, it is mercy preventing stagnation. There is also an element of refinement tied to relocation. When you pack your belongings, you are forced to evaluate what truly matters. You separate what is essential from what is unnecessary. In doing so, you participate in a symbolic act of spiritual discernment. The chosen are often called to release more than furniture. They are called to release old mindsets, outdated fears, and identities that no longer fit. The physical act of moving mirrors the internal act of letting go. God rarely changes your address without also reshaping your understanding. You may find yourself reflecting on the prayers you have whispered in private moments. Perhaps you asked for direction. Perhaps you asked for increase, for clarity, for breakthrough. Answers to such prayers do not always arrive in dramatic spectacle. Sometimes they arrive in the form of a new key placed in your hand. The key may look simple, ordinary even, but it represents access to a season you could not enter before. God answers with placement as often as He answers with provision. It is natural to feel a tremor of uncertainty when faced with change. Even chosen hearts wrestle with questions. Will this place truly be what I need? Will I adjust? Will I thrive? Yet faith is not the elimination of questions. It is the decision to move forward despite them. The voice that declared your new dwelling is the same voice that has guided you thus far. It has not failed you in previous chapters, and it will not falter now. Trust deepens when obedience is exercised. There is also a quiet dignity in knowing that you have been positioned intentionally. You are not drifting through life at the mercy of random circumstance. You are being led. To be led requires humility. It requires acknowledging that wisdom greater than your own has charted a course beyond your immediate understanding. The chosen are not those who control every outcome, but those who surrender control when called. As next week approaches, you may sense both closure and anticipation intertwined. Closure for the chapter ending, anticipation for the chapter beginning. The threshold between the two can feel delicate, almost sacred. When you cross it, you will carry with you every lesson learned in former rooms, every resilience built in former trials. Nothing invested in your growth has been wasted. The new place does not erase the old, it builds upon it. Imagine standing within those new walls for the first time. The silence may feel unfamiliar. The echoes may sound different. But within that unfamiliarity lies possibility. The space is waiting to be filled not only with furniture, but with faith. Conversations will occur there that shape your direction. Quiet moments will settle there that restore your strength. Decisions will be made there that influence more than you currently foresee. The chosen path is rarely comfortable, but it is always purposeful. God does not relocate you to impress others or to satisfy surface desires. He relocates you to align you with His unfolding design. This new dwelling is not merely shelter. It is a setting for transformation. Within its boundaries, your character will be refined, your trust will deepen, and your calling will find clearer expression. And so, as the appointed week draws near, hold the declaration firmly in your spirit. You are not being uprooted without reason. You are being planted with intention. The place awaiting you has been prepared not only to house your body, but to shape your becoming. There is a quiet culmination in the moment when movement becomes reality, when the declaration of God transitions from promise to experience. This is the place you will live in starting next week. Ceases to be a distant statement and becomes the ground beneath your feet. The chosen often discover that the final stage of transition is not marked by noise or spectacle, but by stillness, a stillness that asks you to look around and recognize that what was once spoken in faith has now taken form in fact. You are here. The door has opened. The threshold has been crossed. Yet arrival is not the end of the matter. In many ways, it is the true beginning. A place appointed by God carries responsibility along with blessing. It is not merely a shelter from the elements. It is a stewardship. The walls that now surround you are entrusted to your care. The atmosphere within them will reflect your thoughts, your words, your prayers. Dwelling becomes shaped by the spirit that inhabits it. If you fill it with gratitude, it will feel abundant regardless of size. If you fill it with faith, it will feel expansive regardless of limitation. The chosen understand that they do not simply occupy spaces, they cultivate them. There is also a deeper layer to this relocation, that unfolds gradually. God does not reveal every purpose at once. You may initially notice practical advantages or adjustments, new routines forming, different rhythms emerging. But beneath these surface changes, something more profound is taking place. You are being repositioned for encounters you could not have had elsewhere. Certain conversations will occur within these walls that will shift your understanding. Certain moments of solitude will refine your character. The place itself becomes a silent partner in your transformation. It is possible that as you settle in, subtle resistance may attempt to rise. Old thoughts may whisper that you were more secure before, more certain in the familiar. But familiarity is not always faithfulness. God does not measure your progress by how long you remain comfortable. He measures it by how willing you are to rust him in new terrain. The chosen are not preserved in sameness, they are refined through change. When doubt surfaces, it is not evidence that the move was mistaken. It is simply the mind adjusting to what the spirit has already accepted. Within this new dwelling, you may begin to see patterns breaking. Habits that once seemed fixed may loosen their grip. Perspectives that felt rigid may soften. Environment influences expectation. When God changes your surroundings, He often changes what you believe is possible. You may find yourself dreaming differently here, praying differently, even resting differently. The air may carry a subtle sense of promise, not because of anything visible, but because obedience has aligned you with divine intention. There is also something sacred about beginning again. Every new place offers the gift of fresh foundations. You have the opportunity to establish rhythms that reflect who you are becoming rather than who you once were. The chosen are given new ground not to repeat old cycles, but to build differently. Each decision made within these walls contributes to the atmosphere that will define this season. Small choices, where you place your time, hat you allow into your thoughts, how you respond to challenges, shape the unseen structure of your future. As days turn into weeks, you may look back and realize that what once felt uncertain now feels fitting. What once seemed abrupt now feels timely. God's direction often reveals its wisdom in hindsight. The urgency of starting next week was not pressure, it was precision. Delay might have bred hesitation. Immediate obedience birthed momentum. You are not here by accident. You are here by appointment. The chosen life is marked by movement, but also by meaning. Each relocation is a chapter, not a conclusion. This place will not define you entirely, but it will contribute to your formation. It will hold laughter and challenge, quiet victories and unseen battles. And through it all, you will be shaped. The purpose of divine placement is not simply comfort. It is growth aligned with calling. As you stand within these new walls, perhaps in moments of quiet reflection, allow gratitude to rise. Gratitude not only for the structure, but for the guidance. Not only for the provision, but for the positioning. The same voice that declared this dwelling over your life continues to guide you within it. You are not left alone to navigate its season. The one who placed you here remains present. And so the declaration proves true, not only in physical relocation, but in spiritual alignment. The place you now inhabit is more than a change of address. It is evidence that your life is being directed with care. The chosen do not wander without purpose. They are led, placed, and shaped according to a design that unfolds step by step. Within these walls, your story continues, refined by obedience and sustained by trust.